Border security thrust into turmoil by a whistleblowing state trooper. Have the governor's get tough tactics gone too far and put migrant lives in serious danger? Here at home, an environmental watchdog sounding the alarm over a new low-income housing project literally surrounded by legacy pollution. And the shocking congressional testimony of an IRS investigator who says despite overwhelming evidence, the Justice Department let Hunter Biden off the hook for multiple felony crimes. I'm Greg Grugan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, attorney and conservative commentator Gary Polland. Next up, educator and public safety advocate Paul Castro. In the 3 spot, Holly Hansen, political writer for The Texan. Batting cleanup, Bill King, well-known businessman and columnist for Real Clear Politics. And closing us out, Marcus Davis, highly regarded restaurateur and host of Fish, Grits, and Politics. Let's begin. In exactly 107 days, the nation's 4th largest city will choose a new leader. And despite multiple truly Herculean challenges, including enormous impending financial liabilities, a lingering historic crime wave, and crumbling infrastructure, a considerable field of contenders has assembled, among them 14-term Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Jackson Lee was called out this week by journalists at the Houston Landing, who discovered the Congresswoman has accepted multiple contributions, which exceeded the city's $5,000 limit for individual donors. The Landing also identified a contribution to Jackson Lee from a woman who is no longer alive. The Congresswoman's campaign said refunds are being issued. Meantime, candidate MJ Khan is under scrutiny for a potential residency violation. It's well known Khan's longtime multi-million-dollar home is located in the city of Piney Point Village. And yet, for purposes of his candidacy, Khan has listed the address of a property in South Houston owned by a corporation he controls. Panel, in regard to both candidates, do these seem like rookie mistakes or measures meant to intentionally deceive? And I'm going straight to Bill King on this, who has a little experience in the mayor's race.
It's pretty easy to trip across the violations of the $5,000 and when you're trying to keep track of who's married to who and what companies and all that. I do not understand how you accept a $25,000 contribution. That should have never been deposited in the bank account. And so that really was kind of a rookie mistake, I think. On the MJ situation, I'm really sort of fed up with this. And I like MJ. I've known him for a long time. But he lives in Piney Point. You know, if you want to run for the mayor of Houston, then move into the city of Houston and put up with the crap that all the rest of us have to put up who live here. You know, he's had a homestead at the same location in Piney Point with his wife for the last 20 years. He changed his voter registration in May of this year, which, by the way, to run for mayor, you've got to live here for 12 months. So he changed his registration, well within the time, and then says, oh, by the way, I leased that property. He doesn't live there. A guy named O.C. Tate lives there and has for a long time. Look, you Republicans, if you want to be serious about election integrity, then you need to stop running people for office that don't live in the jurisdiction they're attempting to serve.
Gary Polland, Amber Mostyn is famously the treasurer for Sheila Jackson Lee, and she's no political rookie. She's a big fundraiser. She's wealthy in her own right. She knows the rules. I mean, what does it say about the operation that they were kind of playing fast and loose with this stuff and not keeping an eye on the limits?
A couple of points. Number one, the $5,000 limit is way too low and hadn't been adjusted for inflation. Number two, do I think that Sheila Jackson Lee intentionally took a big donation and thought they'd skated by? No. I'm sure she had no idea it happened. I'm sure it's people that worked for her. So I consider it much ado about nothing. Now, on MJ Khan, who I know and like, I didn't know everything that Bill said. I've heard that he had multiple residences, but if indeed he lives in Piney Point, he's not eligible to run for mayor, and he needs to get out of the race. That's the bottom line.
Hey, Marcus, is anybody even paying attention to this other than us political types?
You know what? I don't know. You're right. Bill has the juice. He has what they call the scoop, the tea. But you know, I don't know. You know, I'm a purist. While these things are important, I think we should be paying attention to who's going to run the city and who's going to lift those Herculean tasks that you mentioned in the opening. That's the thing I think we should be focused on. I'm not saying that, you know, getting away with little tricks of the trade here or there are not a testament to someone's integrity or a testament to an oversight, but we got to keep the main thing, and the main thing is Houston.
Hey, Paul Castro, a central issue this time last year and the year before was public safety. Are you hearing anything in public safety from any of the candidates that is drawing your attention?
So far, what I've heard is, you know, State Senator Whitmire making that a center point of his campaign. And I know that ever since, you know, what happened with my son happened, he has reached out to the family. He has looked to provide personal support. When the Harris County Bail Bond Board was looking at adjusting its policies, he personally went along with State Rep Johnson, Ann Johnson, to speak to the Bail Bond Board to lobby on behalf of all citizens. I appreciate that, and I support him for those efforts.
Holly, you keep an eye on city politics. What do you make of the field that's assembled and the race as it's evolving?
Well, I think it's certainly a very interesting race, but you know, to some of the earlier points, I think we're going to see Khan probably drop out, right? The race is really looking like it's going to come down to Sheila Jackson Lee and John Whitmire. Back to the campaign finance issue, you know, these kinds of things happen pretty frequently in campaigns. You know, you often see candidates, you know, with problematic reports, and they do have to sometimes refund. Sometimes they end up getting a fine, but it does seem like an odd mistake. And in addition to those over-the-limit contributions, there appear to be maybe 11 or 12 corporate contributions on Sheila Jackson Lee's campaign finance report. So that's going to be a problem too that they're going to have to address. They're going to have to clean that up a little bit. But I agree with Marcus. Not a lot of voters pay attention to those details. They're really concerned about, you know, what's the quality of life here in Houston, and what are these candidates going to do to make it better?
Bill King, Mark Jones at Rice is going to come out with some polling this week. It could be the first big poll, and I think it's probably going to show what everybody in this panel has said. We got two front runners, and everybody else is trying to break through. Can they do that in debates? Can a Gilbert Garcia or one of the other candidates break through? Lee Kaplan?
No. I mean, there's not enough people watch debates. I think I participated in 7 televised debates in 2015, and the viewership on all those is very low. You've got to be able to do what Busby did, which is spend a huge amount of money on TV, and nobody's got the funds to do that. Whitmire and Sheila Jackson Lee are so far ahead of anybody else in this race. I don't see any possibility anybody but the two of them will be in the runoff.
For the record, I watched the debates, Bill, and you did a doggone good job.
All right. Here, still to come. A whistleblowing state trooper protests brutal anti-migrant tactics he alleges are being used by fellow officers on the border. And in our Sunday survey, we are asking viewers if they support or oppose deployment of razor wire and river barriers to discourage immigrant crossings. Tell us what you think. Vote on our webpage, fox26houston.com. Just click on poll at the top of the page, or tell 26 using our news app. But up next, valuable economic diplomacy or fringe benefit on the taxpayer dime. We're discussing the mayor of Houston's trip to a trio of African nations.
Acknowledging my presence, you are acknowledging the city that I represent and the people of the city of Houston that I serve.
Sounds and images from our city's mayor, Sylvester Turner, during a 3-country West African trade mission funded by hotel occupancy taxes dedicated to promoting tourism. Of course, panel, this junket comes less than 6 months before Turner exits City Hall for good, and begs the question, are these goodwill trips a good use of time and public money? I ask you, Gary Pollan.
No way. He's on his way out of office, and look, if everything was working great in Houston, we didn't have any real serious problems, go on a trip. But that's not the case. And the second point is, his major accomplishment apparently is urging we have direct air service between Lagos and Houston, which if there is demand, I'm sure United or other airlines would be happy to provide it. I don't think there's the demand. So this is just a paid-for vacation by the taxpayers on his way out of office.
All right, Marcus, your thoughts on this stuff?
Well, having served on the Convention and Visitors Bureau for the city of Houston, I understand the importance of trade trips. I understand the importance of trying to open the doors of tourism, open the doors for business to be done across the sea. I also understand that, you know, if you're on your way out of the door, you got to find something that you believe that you can get done. I can't vouch for the trip, but I understand the concept, the process.
All right, Bill King, in a parallel universe with you at City Hall, what would the trade missions have been?
I'd have probably gone on some. I'd have paid for them myself. You know, look, there's clearly, Marcus is right, there's some benefit to these things. It would be interesting if somebody actually did an analysis, because look, this is not the first trade mission. This is extremely common in previous administrations, and I don't know that Turner's done this any more than previous mayors. I think they all do quite a few of these. They do seem to do more towards the end of their term, right before they leave office. But it would be interesting to have somebody actually look at, is there any actual tangible results from this? I doubt we're going to get that kind of investigation, though.
Okay, jump in here, 20 seconds, Paul Castro. You think this is a good use of money?
Oh, no, I don't think it's a good use of money, but I think it's something that happens on both sides of the aisle. I think that most of us just, you know, regular taxpayers just kind of turn our heads and say, you know, seriously.
Okay, we're going to keep our eye on it. I think there are more trips to come in the next 6 months. All right. When we come back, a controversial low-income housing project is drawing fire from environmental watchdogs. The big question, why is it being built next door to land marred by legacy pollution?
If our government puts hundreds of families living in this area where we know there are high levels of lead, it's going to be on our radar as the next cancer cluster.
That's highly respected environmental watchdog Jackie Medcalf sounding the alarm about a controversial 400-unit low-income housing complex under construction at 800 Middle Street. The city-approved project is drawing fire because it's literally surrounded by industrial properties contaminated by legacy pollution. Across one fence line is a former state Superfund site and an active lead processing facility. On two other sides of the property that served as landfills for burned up garbage from the city's old Velasco trash incinerator plant. In a taxpayer-funded deal estimated at more than $100 million, the Houston Housing Authority claims the area is safe for habitation. Medcalf emphatically disagrees.
This is not an area that I would ever advise anyone to move to, particularly a family to move to. What are you going to advise the children not to go outside and play in the dirt, not to dig in the yard? They're going to do that. They're kids.
Panel developers claim the property has been remediated, but frankly, I've seen some pretty compelling evidence that contaminants very close by are still exposed. Holly Hansen, you've written about this. What's going on here? I mean, we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks.
Sure. Well, you know, there's a lot of dispute about whether or not the central property where the apartments are located has been fully remediated. The question that is not at play is whether or not the adjacent properties are polluted. So even the Houston Housing Authority's own environmental consultant wrote a letter to a district court judge earlier this year admitting that there were 3,270 parts per million in lead in the soil where they dug up a trench to put in a drain, a kind of a sewer, storm drain. That is twice the industrial limit, and it is 6 times the limit that's safe for residential properties. That is not in dispute. Now, how this got approved, there are still a lot of questions swirling about how it got HUD approval, who is sending in these reports that are saying it's safe. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you go to the property and you see the black ash, you see the active lead smelter right next door. A lot of concerns. I certainly wouldn't live there. I wouldn't want anyone I loved or cared about to live there either.
Gary Pollan, take 30 seconds.
And this is outrageous. And this is a failure of government everywhere, or it's just another example of crony corruption that permeates the city of Houston. This deal went through because they wanted the money. They want to get the money. They don't care about the people. Remember, the people moving here are people that had their houses flooded out. That's who's coming in. So we're going to take them from floods, and we're going to then put them in a Superfund site. This is dangerous. I wouldn't want anyone I care about, even people I don't care about, wanting to live there. This has got to stop. This whole idea, everything's okay, that's when my response to that is, show me the proof.
Bill King, you've been looking into this as well.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about exactly what all the remediation status is. The TCEQ is certified that the lead facility and the site across the street have been remediated. There's a lot of controversy whether that's actually true. There's a third location where the city's old incinerator was that I can't find any evidence has been investigated or remediated or anything. But even the site, even the lead company that has a clean bill of health from TCEQ, you're still talking about processing lead across the fence from where families are going to live. That just can't be a very good idea. And you know, there's a bunch of very expensive townhouses right across the street from all this. And I just wonder to what extent the people that bought those townhouses or the people that are moving into this apartment project, any of this is going to be disclosed to them. They ought to at least be told what the situation is.
Okay, we're going to talk more about this. Still ahead, an investigator at the core of the case against Hunter Biden calls out the Justice Department for letting the president's son get away with multiple crimes.
If our government puts hundreds of families living in this area where we know there are high levels of lead, it's going to be on our radar as the next cancer cluster.
That's highly respected environmental watchdog Jackie Metcalf sounding the alarm about a controversial 400-unit low-income housing complex under construction at 800 Middle Street. The city-approved project is drawing fire because it's literally surrounded by industrial properties contaminated by legacy pollution. Across one fence line is a former state Superfund site and an active lead processing facility. On two other sides of the property that served as landfills for burned up garbage from the city's old Velasco trash incinerator plant. In a taxpayer-funded deal estimated at more than $100 million, the Houston Housing Authority claims the area is safe for habitation. Metcalf emphatically disagrees.
This is not an area that I would ever advise anyone to move to, particularly a family to move to. But are you going to advise the children not to go outside and play in the dirt, not to dig in the yard? They're going to do that. They're kids.
Panel developers claim the property has been remediated, but frankly, I've seen some pretty compelling evidence that contaminants very close by are still exposed. Holly Hansen, you've written about this. What's going on here? I mean, we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks.
Sure. Well, you know, there's a lot of dispute about whether or not the central property where the apartments are located has been fully remediated. The question that is not at play is whether or not the adjacent properties are polluted. So even the Houston Housing Authority's own environmental consultant wrote a letter to a district court judge earlier this year admitting that there were 3,270 parts per million in lead in the soil where they dug up a trench to put in a drain, kind of a sewer, storm drain. That is twice the industrial limit, and it is 6 times the limit that's safe for residential properties. That is not in dispute. Now, how this got approved, there are still a lot of questions swirling about how it got HUD approval, who is sending in these reports that are saying it's safe. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you go to the property and you see the black ash, you see the active lead smelter right next door. A lot of concerns. I certainly wouldn't live there. I wouldn't want anyone I loved or cared about to live there either.
Gary Pollan, take 30 seconds.
And this is outrageous. And this is a failure of government everywhere, or it's just another example of crony corruption that permeates the city of Houston. This deal went through because they wanted the money. They want to get the money. They don't care about the people. Remember, the people moving here are people that had their houses flooded out. That's who's coming in. So we're going to take them from floods, and we're going to then put them in a Superfund site. This is dangerous. I wouldn't want anyone I care about, even people I don't care about, wanting to live there. This has got to stop. This whole idea, everything's okay, that's when my response to that is, show me the proof.
Bill King, you've been looking into this as well.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about exactly what all the remediation status is. The TCEQ is certified that the lead facility and the site across the street have been remediated. There's a lot of controversy whether that's actually true. there's a third location where the city's old incinerator was that I can't find any evidence has been investigated or remediated or anything. But even the site, even the lead company that has a clean bill of health from TCEQ, you're still talking about processing lead across the fence from where families are going to live. That just can't be a very good idea. And you know, there's a bunch of very expensive townhouses right across the street from all this. And I just wonder to what extent the people that bought those townhouses or the people that are moving into this apartment project, any of this is going to be disclosed to them. They ought to at least be told what the situation is.
Okay, we're going to talk more about this.
When we say that troopers are denying people water in 110-degree heat, that's not just torture. That's murder.
This is not only an attack on the Latino community, but an assault on our collective humanity.
I want people prosecuted.
Outrage and then some after a whistleblowing state trooper alleges fellow DPS officers have been ordered to push migrants back into the Rio Grande and deny those seeking to cross life-saving water. The whistleblower also claims to have witnessed a migrant woman caught in state-deployed razor wire suffer a miscarriage. While the controversial count has been categorically denied by the Department of Public Safety, that hasn't stopped some state lawmakers from demanding an investigation and, if warranted, criminal charges. Meantime, in Washington, Senator John Cornyn redirected blame to the Biden administration's open border policy, which has drawn an estimated 6 million uninvited immigrants since the president took office.
Some of the tactics that are being used at the border are desperation tactics because, frankly, the Biden administration is not doing its job.
Panel, Senator Cornyn cautioned Texans to withhold judgment, citing allegations nearly 2 years ago of mounted Border Patrol agents allegedly whipping immigrants, allegations which were later proven untrue. Paul Castro, you probably followed this story this week. Does this concern you, what you're hearing in terms of the tough tactics on the border?
Yeah, so I have family members who work for the Border Patrol, and they say quite simply, I mean, they're being overwhelmed at times by the number of people coming over the border. At the same time, I think all Texans, all Americans can look at something like what's being alleged and say, that's wrong. You know, we should be able to find a place to maintain border security. I think that's hypercritical to all people on the border, and find ways to make sure that it's being very clearly communicated to those on the front lines what the expectations are. But right now, honestly, the border's being overwhelmed, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed by the Biden administration, especially if they're going to be directing the Abbott administration to change tactics.
Bill, does this meet your definition of brutality?
Well, sure, if it's true, without question. I mean, look, you cannot defend the conduct that's been alleged, but as Cornyn said, we also heard the stories about whipping migrants when they were actually just riding a horse and using the rein to hit the horse. People apparently didn't ride horses that made these allegations. So, you know, whether they are true or not, I don't know. But it is a DPS officer that's making those, so I think we've got to take that seriously, and I think there needs to be an investigation of it.
Gary, could field officers actually be held accountable for following orders? I mean, you know, we have many examples replete through history where they were held accountable.
Well, if there's instances of what we call police brutality, that can be prosecuted. It's violation of civil rights, so that can be done. But the rush to judgment is unseemly. And by the way, you know, the officers accused of whipping illegal immigrants, which they were not guilty of, they were never apologized to. Remember, Joe Biden got on TV and was berating them. Never apologized when it turned out it was not true. So in the rush to judgment, let's take a deep breath. Obviously, I agree with Bill that we should not be doing these kind of tactics, but let's see if that's in fact what's going on. Maybe this trooper has an agenda. I don't know. We need to get control of the border. That's the job of the Biden administration. They have not done it for the entire time they've been in office.
Okay, we're going to be right back with more on the border whistleblower, so stay with us. Welcome back. We have some early results from our Sunday survey in which we asked, do you support or oppose use of razor wire and river barriers to discourage immigrants? 94% of you say yes. All right, Marcus Davis, what do you make of that?
I think, again, this is a big problem that nobody wants to solve. When I say nobody wants to solve, the elected officials, the powers that be. This is political football that keeps getting tossed back and forth. Humane treatment, humanity, those things are important. And those officers have an obligation to do what's right. Not saying that they're wrong, the allegations are the allegations, but if the allegations are true, then they should be held accountable for that. But when we're talking about accountability, we have to go to the top. The reason that this is happening is because our federal government is not doing what they need to do in order to protect our borders and to allow people to come to this country in a way that benefits both the immigrant and the nation.
Holly, last word to you.
Yeah, we're talking about this being cruel, and if it's true, there is a problem and it should be investigated, right? And we will get to the bottom of it. Hopefully, if it's proven to be false, there will be some apologies, as there should have been in the incident of the whipping. But what's cruel is allowing an open border situation that gives cartels power, allows them to take advantage of people, of women, of children. They're bringing drugs across the border. We have the fentanyl crisis. That's cruel. That is a problem for all of us, both those who want to come here for legitimate reasons and the residents who live here, especially those in those border communities.
Well said. When we come back, more than 2,000 jobs whacked at Houston ISD. Will the massive bureaucratic cutbacks funnel additional resources into campuses across the city? Welcome back. The reorganization of the state's largest school district continued this week with the announcement that 2,300 plus central office positions are being eliminated in Houston ISD. Citing declining enrollment, Superintendent Mike Miles described the administrative jobs on the chopping block as unsustainable bloat. Jackie Anderson, president of the Houston Federation of Teachers, described the drawdown as, quote, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Panel, if that means transferring resources from the bureaucracy to the classroom, that may not be a bad thing at all. Paul Castro, what do you make of this on that issue?
Yeah, so a big part of this has to do with funding that came in due to COVID that has dried up. Houston ISD got a little bit over $1 billion total for expenditures over 3 years. We're entering the third year. But most of that was spent in years 1 and 2, and a lot of those dollars went to central office positions. And so Mike Miles inherited a lot of central office bloat. He is reducing those so that the reduction in overall attendance for the district isn't going to impact the school. So he's reducing centrally. I think most Houstonians can get behind that. It's a very difficult position he's been put in. And a year ago, if you remember, central office people were being sent into the school. So the whole thing about like not having enough teachers, that's an every year problem. He's getting a lot of criticism that I don't think is rightly deserved.
There is no bigger advocate for getting more resources into the classroom than Marcus Davis. Are you going to be watching this?
Of course I am. But, I want to caution us to be careful about how we're treating this situation, right? We analyze and scrutinize every single move, which we should do, but there are kids that are at the bottom of this. This is not about what people think and ideas, but this is about and we should want for the best and the right things to happen. And we should hope that, yes, if you're reallocating funds, that it should benefit the student. I can't say that I have a whole lot of faith in the state of Texas just based on Texas's record on education, but I am hopeful that this pans out. And I want to caution Houstonians about hoping for the worst, because we'll get it if we do.
Yeah, Bill King, I think you served on the HISD Foundation for years, didn't you?
Right, yes.
Okay, what do you make of what's unfolding here?
Yeah, so HISD is in a very difficult situation, a very difficult demographic situation. The school enrollment is down from, I think, about 215 to 185, something in that area just over the last few years here. Some of that's pandemic related, but some of it is the fact that, families don't really see the value proposition for living in the city anymore, and so they're moving out to the suburbs. They've been doing that for years, and so this is not going to get any better. And by the way, HISD's funding is based on how many kids are enrolled there from the state.
Okay, we're going to keep an eye on it. When we come back, misery in Texas prisons amid this smoking Texas summer. An urgent call for inmate families and lawmakers for air conditioning as a matter of health and safety. Welcome back on tonight's edition of Texas The Issue Is. Amid stifling summer heat, the outcry for mandatory air conditioning at all Texas prisons.
But when temperatures are rising above 120 degrees inside cells, that's inhumane. That's indecent. Whether you've done something wrong or whether you just didn't have a good legal team, everyone deserves to be treated like a human.
Texas temperatures day after day. It's hard to challenge that argument. Lightning round. What do you think, Bill King?
Look, it's not just the prisoners there, it's the guards, it's the people that work there, it's the cafeteria workers, and by the way, trying to control a prison population in those degrees, like, this is stupid. Just air condition the damn prisons.
You agree, Gary?
Absolutely.
Okay, Marcus, what do you think? I mean, it seems crazy. It's 2023. Prison should be air conditioned.
I've long believed that we don't take full advantage of the opportunity of having people in prison to rehabilitate them. There's no rehabilitation that's taking place in 120-degree weather.
Holly, thoughts?
Absolutely. I have to agree with that, with what everybody else has said. It's just a no-brainer. Put air conditioning in the prisons. You know, it benefits those who work there, even if you're one of those who thinks, you know, we ought to bring back chain gangs. This is nothing like that. You know, let's be humane about this.
Thoughts, Paul?
My son's killer is there, but also his guards. They deserve the air conditioning.
All right, all right. Yeah, Bill, real quick, why hasn't this happened? Do you know?
Look, we've got this mentality, we're going to be tough on criminals. The truth is, a lot of the people in those prisons are there for substance abuse, mental health problems, and everything else. We need to separate out the people that are really dangerous, that really need to be punished, from people that just do a lot of stuff we don't like.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thanks to this week's panel, and thank you for joining us. The conversation continues on a national level next on Fox News Sunday with Shannon Bream, and we'll keep talking here with What's Your Point Overtime, streaming live on fox26houston.com and on our Facebook page. From all of us here, have a safe and healthy week.